We know the face, a frozen scream, fanged teeth, eyes that can kill. We know the hair, not curls, not braids, snakes, a living crown of venom. We know the story. Look at her and you turn to stone. Slay the monster, raise the head. The hero wins, the end. That's the version we were given. For more than 2,000 years, Medusa has been nothing but a nightmare, a beast in a cave, a test for a hero, a trophy on a shield. But that story is a lie, because before she was a monster, Medusa was a girl. Before the snakes, she had hair that poets wrote about. Before the fangs, she had a smile that lit up a temple. Before the curse, she had a life. She wasn't a goddess, she wasn't immortal, she wasn't evil, she was devoted. A priestess of Athena, sworn to purity, sworn to service, sworn to a goddess she trusted more than anyone in the world. She prayed in the mornings, she lit the sacred fires at night, she kept her vows, she did everything right. And that was her mistake. Because in a world ruled by cruel gods, being beautiful was dangerous, being visible was fatal, and trusting the divine could cost you everything. This is not the story of a hero slaying a monster. This is the story of a girl who asked the gods for protection and was handed a curse. The story of a victim the gods turned into a weapon. The true story of Medusa, not the beast in the shadows, the woman before the snakes. She was not born a monster. She was not a goddess, not a creature of legend. Before the snakes, before the stone, Medusa was simply a girl, a mortal, fragile, finite, living in a world ruled by beings who would never die. In the coastal city where salt clung to the air and marble temples scraped the sky, Medusa walked the steps of Athena's sanctuary as a priestess, not a warrior, not a queen, a servant of the goddess of wisdom. From the moment she entered the temple, her life stopped belonging to herself. She took the vow, no husband, no lover, no children, her body, her thoughts, her future, all dedicated to Athena. In a world where women were traded, married, and discarded, Medusa chose something different: purpose. By day, she cleaned the altar, polished the bronze shields that lined the walls, and lit the sacred fires as the sun rose over the Aegean. By night, she whispered prayers into the vast silence of the temple, kneeling on cold stone, her fingers tracing the patterns carved into the floor. She wasn't powerful, she wasn't untouchable, but she was devoted. The stories say Medusa was beautiful, beautiful in the way poets tried to capture and always failed. Hair that fell like waves over her shoulders, eyes that held the calm of still water and the sharpness of a drawn blade, a face that could have belonged to a goddess, trapped in a mortal frame. But beauty in the ancient world was never just a blessing. It was an invitation, and not always from the right kind of eyes. Men came to the temple to pray, but their gazes lingered longer on her than on the statue of Athena itself. They brought offerings for the goddess, but their smiles, their glances, their whispered comments in the courtyard, those were for Medusa. She ignored them. She lowered her eyes. She tightened her grip on her vows. When other priestesses gossiped about suitors and secret admirers, Medusa stayed silent. Her pride wasn't in being desired. It was in being faithful. She believed that if she did everything right, if she honored the goddess, if she kept her vows pure, Athena would protect her. That was the unspoken promise of the temple. Serve the divine, and the divine will watch over you. So Medusa poured herself into that promise. She learned the sacred hymns until her voice blended with the echoes of the marble hall. She memorized the stories of Athena, the strategist, the protector of cities, the guardian of heroes. And in every tale there was a pattern. Athena favored the clever, the disciplined, the loyal. Medusa tried to mold herself into that ideal. No indulgence, no disobedience, no desire, just service. On festival days, when the city roared with music and wine, Medusa remained inside the temple. Incense smoke curled around her like phantom hands as she placed garlands at the feet of Athena's statue, the stone eyes of the goddess staring down, unblinking. Did the goddess see her? Did she notice this small, fragile life held up in devotion? Medusa believed she did. She had to, because that was all Medusa had. Her faith that the world made sense, that if she was good, if she was pure, if she followed every rule, nothing truly terrible could happen to her. She was not tempting fate. She was not defying the gods. She was not playing with powers beyond her understanding. She was doing everything right. And that is what makes what comes next so unforgivable. Night fell heavy over the city. The temple was quiet, too quiet. The other priestesses had gone. Torches burned low, throwing long shadows across marble columns. Outside, the sea whispered against the shore. Medusa stayed behind, as she often did, to clean the altar, to tend the flame, to pray, alone, in the silence she believed was safe. The temple was supposed to be untouchable, a boundary even gods respected, a place where no hand could reach you without Athena's eyes upon it. That was the hope, that was the lie, because not all gods respected boundaries. Some enjoyed breaking them. The air shifted. The quiet wasn't quiet anymore. It felt watched. Water scent crept into the hall. Salt, storm, the deep, and then he was there. Poseidon, earth shaker, lord of the sea, brother of Zeus, a god who believed the world belonged to him. Two mortals, his name meant earthquakes, shipwrecks, drowned sailors. To Medusa, in that moment, it meant one thing: danger. He didn't belong here. This was Athena's domain, a temple of strategy and order. Poseidon was chaos in flesh, walking where he should not walk. His eyes found her, not with affection, not with mercy, with appetite. He saw a mortal girl, alone in a sanctuary, a girl bound by vows, a girl who could not leave, who could not cry out, who could not fight a god and hope to win. The more forbidden she was, the more he wanted her. He asked no permission. Gods like him rarely did. Medusa backed away, heart pounding against her ribs. This was Athena's house. If she stayed close to the altar, she would be safe. She had to be safe. She ran to the statue of the goddess. Knees hit stone. Hands clutched the base of the marble feet she'd polished 1,000 times. She did what she had always done. She prayed, "Protect me." But no thunder answered. No spear of light. No voice from above. Only the echo of Poseidon's steps behind her. The sanctuary did not save her. The vow did not save her. Her devotion did not save her. The temple was violated. Her body was violated. The place she trusted most became the scene of her worst nightmare. When it was over, the sea god was gone. No apology, no punishment, no consequences. Gods can break the world and leave it for mortals to clean up. Medusa lay there, shattered on the same cold stone where she had once knelt in faith. The altar candles still flickered, as if nothing had happened, as if the sacred space hadn't been turned into a crime scene. She had done nothing wrong. She had said no. She had run to the only protection she knew. And now she waited, not for Poseidon, for Athena. Surely the goddess would feel the insult to her temple. Surely she would come in fury, not against Medusa, but against the one who had dared to defile her house. Marble eyes watched from above. Then the air changed again. This time it wasn't salt, it was metal. Storm held still, the scent of olive leaves and cold iron. Athena had arrived, not as a gentle comforter, as a judge. Her gaze swept the temple, the overturned offerings, the desecrated ground, the trembling mortal at her feet. There was no confusion in her face. She knew what had happened here. But the god she should punish was her uncle, a rival, a fellow Olympian. In the politics of Olympus, you do not drag your own into the dirt for the sake of a mortal. You do not humiliate a god of the sea to avenge a girl who will die in a few decades anyway. Instead, the ancient logic took over. The temple is pure. It must remain pure. Anything that pollutes it must be removed. In Greek thought, a crime like this left a stain, a miasma, on the place and the people. That stain had to be cleansed, not by punishing the powerful, but by making an example of the powerless. So Athena did not look to the ocean. She looked down at Medusa. Your beauty brought him here. Unspoken, but heavy. Your presence defiled my sanctuary. Victim turned into culprit. Prayer turned into accusation. Athena, goddess of wisdom and justice, chose order over compassion, reputation over mercy, and her verdict fell like a blade. Medusa's body convulsed. Her scalp burned. The hair that Poseidon had touched, the hair poets praised, twisted, writhed, split. Strands thickened, sharpened, scaled. They hissed. Locks became serpents, coiling and snapping, tasting the air with forked tongues. They were alive, they were angry, they were hers. Her skin, once warm and human, cooled and hardened. Scales crept over her like chains forged from her own flesh. Her fingertips clawed, nails blackening, curling like talons. Her mouth opened to scream, but the sound that came out was something else. Half human, half animal, a raw sound of a soul being rewritten. Then came the worst of it, her eyes. Athena's power moved through them, twisting the final piece of Medusa that was still hers. No longer windows to a gentle, mortal girl, they became weapons. Cursed, whoever met her gaze would turn to stone. At first, it sounds like a weapon, a power, but think about it. You cannot look at your sister. You cannot look at your lover. You cannot look at a child, a friend, a stranger, without risking their life. You cannot seek help. You cannot return to the world. Medusa was sentenced not just to be feared, but to be utterly, hopelessly alone. Exiled to the edges of the world, her face now a death sentence, she became the monster the stories would remember. Not because she was born evil, not because she chose violence, but because a god wanted what he could not have, and a goddess refused to blame him for it. Ancient Greeks would have said, the temple had to be purified, the order of the gods had to be preserved. To them, it made sense. To us, it feels like something else entirely. A girl did everything right, a god hurt her, and the only one punished was her. That is the crime at the heart of Medusa's story. Not the gaze that turns men to stone, but the world that turned its gaze away when she needed it most. The world did not see what happened in the temple. It never does. All it saw was the result. A girl vanished from the city. Rumors took her place. They said Athena had cursed a priestess. They said a monster now lived far from mortal lands. They said her gaze could turn men to stone. So Medusa did the only thing left to do. She ran, not back to the city that was gone to her now, not to family. What family could protect her from the gods? She ran to the edges of the map, to a place the poets called the ends of the earth, a rocky island, beaten by waves, where no ships stopped unless they had to. Wind howled through sharp cliffs. Grass clung to cracks in the stone. No temples, no altars, no worshippers, perfect for a monster, perfect for someone who never wanted to be found. Days blurred into each other. The ocean roared, the sky stretched, empty and merciless. Medusa learned how to move without looking at anything living, eyes down, head turned, always careful. A single mistake, a single glance, and even the rare bird or wandering animal that crossed her path would fall silent forever. She discovered her curse alone, by accident. A small creature, a curious fox perhaps, or a goat that had wandered too far, met her eyes. One heartbeat, then stone, frozen mid-step, as if life itself had tripped and never recovered. Medusa staggered back, horror crawling through her. This wasn't power, this was contamination, so she stopped looking at anything, at anyone. The first men did not come for a long time. News travels slowly to the edges of the world, but stories travel. A king somewhere, desperate for glory, a warrior needing a quest, a hero in search of something to prove. The Gorgon, they said. Kill her, bring back her head, and your name will live forever. They did not come for justice, they came for fame. When the first ship appeared on the horizon, Medusa did not rush to greet it. She hid deeper in the island's twisted rocks, heart racing. She heard voices, armor clinking, laughter. They had come armed, they had come warned. They knew what she could do. They knew her gaze meant death. And still, they stepped onto her shore with swords drawn, eyes sharp, intent clear. They were not victims, they were hunters. Medusa did not want to kill them. She did not want to kill anyone. She retreated, backing into a narrow canyon, hoping they'd turn back, decide the risk wasn't worth it. They followed. Metal flashed in the dim light. A thrown spear scraped the rock beside her. In terror, she turned, just for a breath, just enough to see where the danger came from. Their faces locked in place, screams cut off mid-cry, bodies froze, every muscle tensed for a strike that would never land. Stone, silence. When the dust settled, Medusa found herself surrounded, not by corpses, but by statues. Warriors forever lunging, shields half raised, mouths wide in shouts no one would ever hear. This was how her garden began, not as trophies, not as decoration. As an accident, as self-defense, as the physical proof that the world wasn't going to leave her alone, even here. More ships came. Each one carried men who had heard the stories and thought, it won't be me. I'm special. I will be the one who returns. They spoke of her like a beast, like a test, like a prize. They never spoke of her like a person. Every time Medusa tried to hide, every time they hunted her into corners where there was no escape, Every time she was forced to choose between dying under their blades or catching their gaze for a single lethal second. Over the years, the island filled. A forest of stone grew around her. Statues of men from distant lands, each with different armor, different faces, different dreams, all ending the same way. From a distance, they might look like a conqueror's collection. Heroes felled and displayed as warning. Up close, it's something very different. Fear carved into every jawline, desperation etched around every eye. Fingers reaching for something, a shield, a comrade, a hope they never reached in time. Medusa walked among them, careful not to look directly at their stilled expressions, tracing their outlines in her mind instead. She learned their shapes like most people learn their neighbors' names. The young one with the dented helmet, the older one with the scar across his lip, the one whose shield bore the crest of a city she once visited long ago, when she was still just a priestess and the world still made sense. They were not her garden, they were her graveyard, proof that people would rather risk death than let a cursed woman live in peace. Time, for Medusa, did something strange. Mortals counted it in seasons and wrinkles. For her, the years piled up without leaving marks. Storms came and went. Empires rose and fell somewhere beyond the horizon. Children grew into warriors, warriors into legends, legends into dust. But Medusa remained. The snakes in her hair shed their skin and grew new scales. The stone around her cracked and reshaped under wind and rain. Moss crept up the legs of statues that had once been men with beating hearts. She too changed, not in body, but in the way she thought. Once she had believed in gods. Then she believed in punishment. Now she believed in nothing but the sound of waves and the weight of her own breath. Immortality, or something close to it, meant she outlived everyone who had ever known her as a girl. No one remained who remembered her as a priestess. No one remembered the vow. No one remembered the temple. Only the monster on the island. Only the head that could make a king powerful, or a hero famous. She became a story while she was still alive to hear it. Imagine that, to wake up every day and know that somewhere, people are telling tales about you and none of them are true. On the cliffs at dusk, with the sea bleeding gold under the setting sun, Medusa would stand alone, eyes fixed on the horizon she dared not fully meet. Not waiting for rescue, she knew better, just existing. A soul trapped in a body turned into a weapon, trapped on an island turned into a battlefield, trapped in a story that never once asks what she wanted. They called her a monster. But on that lonely rock at the edge of the world, the only thing monstrous was how completely she had been abandoned. The hero did not come for justice. He came for a favor. Perseus was a prince with a problem. His king, Polydectes, wanted him gone. So he smiled at the court and said, "If you are such a brave young man, bring me the head of Medusa as a gift." A suicide mission disguised as a request. Perseus could have refused, but kings don't like no. So he agreed, not because he hated Medusa, he didn't know her, he didn't care about her. To him, she wasn't a woman with a story. She was a solution, a bargaining chip, a dangerous object he could trade for survival and glory. The gods took an interest. They always do when blood is about to be spilled. Athena, who had once cursed Medusa, gave Perseus her polished bronze shield, a mirror so he'd never have to meet Medusa's eyes. Hermes gave him winged sandals, so he could fly, never needing to touch the same ground she walked on. Hades lent him his helm of invisibility, so he could walk unseen, strike without warning, and never risk looking his target in the face. Perseus did not come as a warrior seeking a fair fight. He came as an assassin equipped with divine cheat codes. When he arrived at the island, he saw what the world never really looked at. A graveyard of stone, warriors halfway through a charge, mouths still open in silent war cries, weapons frozen inches from their targets. This was the story he'd heard. Look at all the men she killed, but he didn't ask how many came here to kill her first. He moved among them, silent, invisible, until he found the cave. Inside, there was no roaring monster, no demon waiting on a throne of bones, just Medusa, sleeping, curled on rough cloth, snakes in her hair resting, no hiss, no threat. Just the quiet breathing of someone who had survived another day alone. This is the part the heroic songs tend to skip. There was no duel, no clash of blades, no clever tactics in the heat of battle. Perseus stood over a sleeping woman, hidden by the helm of a god, using a shield that let him never truly look at her. He saw her only as a reflection, never as a person. He raised the sword Athena had guided him to. He did not speak to her. He did not wake her. With one clean, practiced motion, he brought the blade down. Medusa died without opening her eyes. Her head rolled from the makeshift bed, snakes shrieking their last, blood spreading across the stone like a dark, final halo. This is the great heroic feat. An invisible man, armed with gifts from 3 gods, executing a sleeping exile who had nowhere left to run. But the story of Medusa refused to end quietly. From the blood that spilled onto the earth, something impossible happened. The ground split, light and water burst forth. First came Pegasus, the white-winged horse, pure and radiant, everything the world calls beautiful and free. Then Chryser, a warrior figure, golden-sworded, born fully armed from his mother's death. 2 wonders, 2 symbols of power and beauty, rising from the body of the woman the world called a monster. Even in death, Medusa created miracles. Perseus took what he had come for. He lifted her head by the hair, careful not to meet the dead eyes that could still turn men to stone. To him, it wasn't a person. It was a weapon, a trophy, proof. He flew away on borrowed wings, carrying a cursed face in a bag and a story he would turn into legend. He would brandish that head to save his mother, to petrify enemies, to impress kings. The world would call him hero. They would paint him standing over Medusa as if he'd fought a mighty battle, as if she'd been a beast that needed to be slain, not a woman alone on an island executed in her sleep. Songs would praise his courage, statues would celebrate his name. And Medusa? She would be remembered as a test to pass, a monster to defeat, a convenient obstacle in a young man's rise to greatness. No one would sing about the priestess, the vow, the temple, the injustice. But every time someone looks at Pegasus and sees beauty, they are looking at a fragment of the woman the gods destroyed, and the world chose to misunderstand forever. But the story didn't end with Pegasus flying into the sky. It got worse. Athena took Medusa's severed head, not to bury it, not to honor her. She took it to wear it on her shield, the aegis, a symbol of divine protection, now crowned with the face of the woman she had destroyed. The goddess who cursed her now marched into battle behind Medusa's power, lifting the same gaze she once called pollution as her proudest weapon. The ultimate insult, turning a victim into armor, a story into a symbol, a murdered woman into an accessory of war. But the legacy of that face didn't stop with Athena, the Gorgonion. Medusa's head spread everywhere. You see it carved above ancient doors, stamped onto shields, hung on breastplates, set into temple pediments and coins, not as a threat, as protection. The logic was simple and brutal. If Medusa's gaze could stop anything in its tracks, then her image could scare off evil, enemies, and misfortune. Place her face on your doorstep and danger would freeze. Wear her on your shield and your foes would falter. In death, Medusa became what she was never allowed to be in life, a guardian. But even that is soaked in irony. The world used her curse to keep out monsters and invaders, while never admitting that it had made her into a monster in the first place. That contradiction is exactly why she matters today. In modern times, Medusa has become a feminist symbol, not because she's scary, but because she embodies everything that happens when a woman is hurt, blamed, and then rewritten as the problem. She represents rage, the anger of someone who was never listened to. She represents survival, a woman who kept existing even when gods, kings, and heroes treated her like a stepping stone. And she represents the demonization of victims. Ancient voices said, she defiled the temple. Modern voices sometimes still ask, what did she do to deserve it? Why was she there? Why didn't she stop it? Same pattern, different century. We still live in a world where it is easier to call the wounded dangerous than to admit who did the wounding. Look back at her story with that in mind. A priestess who kept her vow, a girl who ran to a goddess for shelter, a victim punished for surviving an assault, an exile hunted by heroes. In a world of cruel gods, Medusa was the only one who was human. She made choices out of fear and hope, not out of divine pride. She was punished, not for her evil, but for someone else's power. And yet from her death came beauty and wonder, Pegasus, and a symbol that guarded households, warriors, and temples for centuries. Her legacy is not the horror carved into her face. It is what she reveals about us, how quick we are to blame, how eager we are to turn pain into myth, how desperately we need our monsters to be anything but human. Medusa matters because when you strip away the divine politics and heroic poetry, you're left with a single devastating truth. The monster was never the girl. The monster was the world that made her one. A priestess who kept her vow, punished for a god's crime. An exile hunted to the edge of the world, forced to turn her own terror into a shield. A severed head worn by the very goddess who made her a monster, and then turned into a symbol of protection for everyone but herself. So now you have to decide, was she a monster, or was she the shield that protected herself from a cruel world? If you want to see another Greek tragedy about a so-called hero who was actually a monster, click here to watch the Hercules deep dive and keep unraveling the lies of our favorite myths.